Welcome to the latest episode of Deals and Deadlines. That's our super agent to the stars, Hadley Engelhardt. I'm your friend, Matt. Couple of ways you can consume this podcast if you're just finding us. You can find Deals and Deadlines available on any podcast platform by just searching, again, Deals and Deadlines, or we are available for you to watch this fun podcast on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, Mr. Hadley, busy show today. We're going to talk to Mark Levin from the NFLPA coming up around the corner. There's a lot to discuss, including an 18-game NFL season that could be on the horizon, more expansion. How do the players and, more importantly, the Players Association think those things will go? But let's start here. The college football season wrapped up. The first ever 12-team...
Finally, by the way.
Finally, right.
It's been a long time.
It was a journey, right? The 12-team playoff is in the books. Let me know your thoughts from a business perspective when we talk about ratings, attendance, the travel from all the fan bases. How do you think the first one will be received by those in charge of college football?
I think they love it. I mean, I think the money was through the roof, and at the end of the day, as we talked about over all these episodes, that's the most important thing. As a fan, I can tell you it was a little too long for me, but it's great to have football. I think playing college football into late January is long. And but I think the fans received it well. Attendance was great, here in Atlanta. I think it's the people that didn't make it and all the complaints and all the things. I mean, they're going to work through all these things. I think it's the ratings were great. The money was great. We had Eric Palms in here from the Orange Bowl several weeks ago. It was a fantastic result there as well. It moving around is going to be great. We were concerned about how are fans of, let's say, Ohio State going to travel. They traveled, and so I think, overall success, again, personally, I think it was a little long. Overlapping with the NFL playoffs.
Well, that's
so it was kind of a little too much, but at the same time, money-wise, fantastic.
So in my world, I love the content. More football, better football. It's great. Let me read you a couple of things. This is from Front Office Sports, who writes, the first 12-team college football playoff culminated in a picture-perfect fashion, but the sport itself is facing an identity crisis. They say college football officially looks, feels, and earns money like a pro league. Will its power brokers ever concede to calling itself just that? It's college football, but it's a pro league 2.0. So the next step of this is still trying to make sure you identify yourself as we're Ohio State and we're Michigan and we're Georgia and we're all these teams, but it looks and feels like professional sports more than ever.
Yeah, let's call a spade a spade. What we once knew college sports to be is over with. I mean, this is a pay-for-play business now. As much as we don't want to say that, and the NCAA and the colleges can't say that, it is what it is. I mean, you listen to the broadcast, and so many players, more than not, when they announce the player, formerly of another school. And then those players, once the game was over, if you saw it, players from Ohio State, Notre Dame, were entering the portal on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. So again, it's all about pay for play. Now listen, both those schools brought in quarterbacks, both paid those quarterbacks 7 figures, and it worked. And again, it was great for the broadcast having Ohio State, Notre Dame, 2 historic franchise, big brands. So I think that was a win-win. And I'm sure we'll talk about the NFL with regard to their Final Four. What do the networks want versus what the fans want? So I think it is pay for play. It is a business now. And, the fan favorite of having players you've watched for 2, 3, 4 years, those days are over.
Now, you talked about the schedule and the length of the whole tournament itself. Joel Klatt from Fox tweeted, "This is supposed to be the pinnacle of our sport," referencing the championship game on Monday night. He said it's the destination of every player, coach, and fan, yet somebody decided playing the national championship on a Monday night deep into the NFL playoffs was a good idea. The mismanagement of college football has been egregious. He continued by saying we should be playing the national championship January 1st every year, our day, make it special. And while it sounds wonderful, it does. Hadley, we just talked about the business of this. Unless you're going to start college football now, August 1st, which you're not going to do. I mean, it's already crept into August where it's 1,000 degrees. I don't know how the calendar would allow for anything but what they ended up doing. The NFL's got divisional round weekend this past Saturday and Sunday. They had the wild card weekend Saturday and Sunday. The college football is not going to try to compete with that. I don't know where the right answer is other than where they put it, because, again, the schedule is the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's living like we talked about back in the old days, and those days are over with. There's no doubt about it. And, again, It was a Monday night. They can't play it on the weekend because the NFL has the weekend. So you had to find a date that worked. Now, it was kind of odd that on the 20th was inauguration, Martin Luther King Day. I don't know if that was part of it or, hey, this is the Monday and this is the day we have to put it. But it was, listen, the viewership was great. The attendance was great. Joel should be happy that he's still broadcasting football games in late January. Yep. So you've got to look at the positive of it. Yes. Should it go back to when we grew up, that January 1st, the Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl was played, and that's how it ended? Sure. But those days are over with, just like we're going to talk about the 18-game season. It used to be a 12-game season. So, again, it's changed. And, again, at the end of the day, it's all about the dollars.
Right. Okay. Speaking of the dollars, Ryan Day had a good day on Monday, winning a title. He was on the hottest of hot seats 5 minutes ago after losing to Michigan. Now he wins a championship, and he received $1 million bonus for winning the title. Is that in line with other bonuses? Like, I imagine you could set any bonus. If you coach at Wake Forest, you could say, I want my coach to have a $15 million championship bonus, because it's not going to happen. At Ohio State, it's more realistic. So does that cap potential incentive bonuses for coaches?
Yes. I mean, it doesn't cap, but every coach has different bonuses, from winning your championship, your Big Ten or SEC, to advancing to the playoff system. Each game you win, you get a bonus. And, sometimes even assistant coaches, defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators have bonus language in their contracts. So that $1 million bonus isn't surprising. When you do go to the smaller Power 4 schools, a Wake Forest, a Vanderbilt, they'll put even bigger numbers there because the odds are small to do that. So it's great to have it there, but having someone like Ohio State that has a real chance of doing it, having that $1 million bonus is common.
And they don't mind writing a check when you win me the championship, but it is kind of funny. You're the head coach of Ohio State, right? You're getting paid 8, 10, 12 million. You're supposed to be battling for these things, but here's a nice little bonus for getting it done. Is always.
And by the way, in the NFL, same thing happens. Yeah. We'll talk to Mark Levin about this. Star players, Patrick Mahomes, players like that. I don't know his contract specifically, but they have those types of things, because if you're winning the big game, it's not going to be a $10 million bonus, but it may be $1 million bonus. There may be some escalation for future years. So it's common across all sports that when you win the championships, World Series, NBA championships, Stanley Cup, coaches, players have these type of incentives in their contract, and owners don't mind paying it because obviously they've won the big prize.
All right, let me ask you about one more thing. In the business of college football, we're dealing with NIL, we're dealing with revenue sharing models, we're dealing with the NCAA's court case. Well, there's a story out of Wisconsin that is right in the middle of this. Wisconsin put out a statement that said they would pursue legal action related to one of their DBs, a kid named Xavier Lucas, who had signed a rev share deal with Wisconsin, then pivoted and left for the University of Miami. Now, Washington says it has credible information indicating Miami tampered with him. I'm sure tampering in this stuff happens now all the time. It's whether or not you can prove it.
You really think that happens?
Shocking.
Oh,
what now has to be done, though, to prove it?
Well, first of all, let's back up. Without knowing the particular paperwork, the attorney representing this player is Darren Heitner, who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago. The revenue sharing doesn't start until the settlement is approved. So right now there is no revenue sharing. That's not in place yet. So whatever contract was allegedly signed starts in June, July, pending the approval. Anything prior to that is through the third party, through the collective. But again, it doesn't prohibit players from entering the portal. And my understanding is he asked the school to enter the portal. When you ask a university to enter the portal and go through the proper channels, they are to, within a certain amount of time, put your name in the portal. They did not do that. I think it's bad for Wisconsin to even fight this. I think they're trying to save face. But at the end of the day, no matter what happens, the kid doesn't want to be there. Right. They're not going to hold him to it. They're going to let him go. And I think by them trying to even fight this, assuming they really are trying to fight this, is going to look bad for them. And I think that they can prove the tampering. Chances are they have done some tampering. Sure. Coaches have talked to players. They have done some things, and nobody's perfect in this world. So again, be careful, what you ask for, because it may come back 100%. And so I think this is much ado about nothing. I think this kid will be at the University of Miami, and if they're smart, they need to let it go, because no matter what happens, the kid doesn't want to be there. Let it go, because it'll open up problems, and you don't want to open up Pandora's box and have bigger issues.
All right, coming up, we'll talk to Mark Levin from the NFLPA. We're going to talk about expansion in the NFL. Are we going to have a league, a division of teams playing in Europe? And the 18-game schedule, it's being whispered. Going to be whispered louder. We'll see what the players' perspective on that is when we talk to Mark about that and more next. Welcome back to Deals and Deadlines with Hadley. I'm Matt. We have a lot to do, so thanks for spending your time with us. Remember, if you're just finding us, thank you. You can make sure you subscribe to the pod. It'll be waiting for you each and every Friday. Search up Deals and Deadlines, and again, we're available on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, let's bring in Mark Levin. He is the Director of Salary Cap and Agent Administration for the NFLPA, and he's kind enough to join us on Deals and Deadlines. Mark, we appreciate the time. You know you're important when you have a title of that magnitude.
Well, I appreciate being here, guys. It's been a pleasure.
And let me chime in about Mark. I've known Mark for 30 plus years, and he is, when you hear about the NFLPA and you have other people that are the face of the NFLPA, every agent will tell you, and players for that point will tell you, that Mark is the backbone of what we do as agents when it comes to negotiating contracts, understanding contracts, interpreting contracts, being creative with contracts. Mark is the go-to guy, and he helps all the agents, including myself. There's not a deal that we don't do that we don't run by Mark and discuss with Mark, and he helps us make sure we get maximum money for the players, which is obviously what he is trying to do as well.
So let's start there then, Mark, because I think it's a great way to go with the NFL just continuing to explode. We're talking about more games now with an 18-game season at some point, and we're looking more at expansion. Tell me about the salary cap. What's the vision? Because, again, we can calculate as the years move forward. I mean, does it have a ceiling on it at some point? Like, where's the growth of the cap go in the next several years?
Well, I mean, as long as league-wide revenues keep expanding, then the players' share is going to the amount that the players are sharing and will expand. Under the current deal, the players get about between 48 and 49% of all revenue. So, future revenues with streaming, the increasing broadcast rights, gambling, any other unforeseen revenue streams that might come down the pike in the next 3 to 5 years, all that gets thrown into a pot, along with ticket sales and concessions and parking and stadium signage and all that stuff gets thrown into this big pot, and the players basically get, like I said, between 48 and 49%. So as long as the revenues keep increasing, the owners are going to make more money. We know that, and the players are going to get their an increase in their share too. So,
I love the fact that, Mark, I love the fact that you threw in that 5-10 years ago, if we had the same podcast and you threw in the word gambling as part of the bottom line, you'd be ridiculed, to say that G word. And so it's amazing that is now part of the pie. And I think, Matt, that's a piece. I mean, obviously we could talk about the streaming and we could talk about concessions, and those things obviously gradually increase every year. I think the key component that Mark talked about when you talk about the revenue sharing is gambling. That's an equation we never thought about, and I think that's only growing exponentially, which will in turn raise the cap, I think, exponentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's even gone as far, guys, as we have I believe, I'm not in the marketing area here, but I believe we have a licensee that has put players, pictures of players, or maybe caricatures of players on slot machines. That's how far it's got.
Mark, that's when you've made it, right? When you're on a slot machine.
Exactly. So the company that's making these slot machines has to pay us a fee to use these players' group licensing rights, and I'm assuming the players that are portrayed on these slot machines are in game uniform. So that company would also then have to pay a licensing fee to the league for the rights to use the uniforms and the team colors and the team names, etc.
So it used to be the Wheaties box. Now it's the gambling. Now it's the slot machine.
It's all real estate, right? It's all land where you can put these pictures and these deals on. So, Mark, let me ask you about what it looks like if we talk about an 18-game season. And I know Roger Goodell said that's where we're probably headed. I think we all knew that's where we were headed. How quickly do you think we're headed there, and how complicated or easy, just if it's percentages, is it going to be to deal with the money of it?
Well, I think we're putting the cart before the horse here a little bit, guys. There have not been any formal discussions, to the best of my knowledge, I am not the executive director of the NFLPA, but to the best of my knowledge, there has not been any formal discussions about 18 games, and the league has to come to us, the NFLPA, the union for the players, to collectively negotiate whether or not the season's going to go from 17 to 18. They can't just unilaterally say, hey, in 2026, for example, we're going to 18 games. They can't do that. They have to collectively negotiate with us, and it would be up to the players, our player leadership, our board of player reps, our executive committee, and it would go to a vote of all the players if they want to expand the season at some point from 17 to 18. So it's by far not a done deal, in my opinion. But if the majority of the players want it, then it'll happen. So I mean, the union's a democracy basically, and it's majority rules. And if let's just say there's 2,000 players, if one more than half votes for it, then it happens. If not, it's not going to happen. No matter how much Goodell and the owners may want it. So we have to see where player leadership comes out on this issue. And I have no idea right now. Again, I'm not involved in those discussions with the league. But we have an annual meeting with our board of player reps coming up in a couple months, and we'll see if it's brought up on the agenda there. I have no idea, but so it's not a done deal, despite the the words coming out of Rodgers' mouth.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no doubt that everything has to be negotiated, but I think what obviously ends up happening, Matt and Mark, you could chime in on this, is the NFL will position it. I think it's moving in that direction, and it's all negotiable, right? It's going to be all right. We're going to have more money for the pot, more money for the players to make. The union will then ask for something that is important to them, whether it's pension, whether it's retirement, whether it's whatever it may be. But I think it's not far fetched to think we're going to an 18-game season. Mark, let me ask you a question. So for our audience to know that, in the past, up through the pandemic, every combine, we would have our annual NFLPA agent meeting in person, and it was a great chance to network with other agents and kind of be there. And since the pandemic, everything has been remote, and for the first time, I think since 2020, we're going to be in person in Indianapolis in late February, and it's going to be the first time we have a meeting in person. And you're a big part of that, obviously. Is it something that you're looking forward to, reconnecting with people that you haven't seen in a while? What do you think the importance is of having that in-person meeting again this year?
Yeah, absolutely looking forward to it. We should probably have close to the 650 to 700 agents there. Assuming everybody that tells us they're coming shows up. Sometimes that remains to be seen. But no, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's important for us as staff members here at the union to get in-person touches with the agents again, now that it's presumably safe, or at least safer certainly than it was 4 years ago. It's important to have that one-on-one connection with agents. These meetings, there's a lot of agents in the room, but there's also time for little sidebar conversations off to the side between an agent and a staff member or two. And I think those in-person type of connections are really important for us to improve our relationship with the agents. And I think just the learning aspect of it is better than at least from my perspective, than doing it virtually. Because if we're doing it virtually, we have no idea if anybody's paying attention, to be honest with you. We're just kind of taking everybody's word for it.
Mark, when you speak, everyone pays attention. Just so you know, Mark. When you speak, everyone pays attention.
I don't know about that. But after 30 plus years, I'm not sure everybody's listening to me anymore. But so being there in person, I think is real important, and we're excited as a staff to be able to get back to that point again.
I would ask both of you guys something.
At least for 2025.
Yeah, I'm curious from an agent standpoint, from the PA standpoint, understanding all this stuff has to be collectively bargained, Mark. What would you think the players' tone would be if we are at a point down the road where we have a team or teams playing internationally as opposed to domestically, and they have to uproot families or they have to move? What do you think? And I want to Hadley you too. How would that go over with a player knowing it's going to be a different situation. It's going to be good. It's just going to be different. How do you think they will receive it?
From a player, I don't think it ever happens. I think it may grow where we play more games internationally. I think there could be teams like Jacksonville that play multiple games and spend a week or 2 or 3 internationally, but I don't see a team going there because of the logistics and, the workouts and the injuries and tax consequences. I think there's too many moving parts. You never say never.
Well, I will say, it's just an opinion, but Boomer Esiason went on a big thing the other day. He said 3, 4, 5 years we have a team playing there full time. I thought that was interesting because I haven't heard anybody say it's going to happen in that time frame.
Was Boomer referring to England or somewhere in Europe?
I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not sure exactly what it was.
Again, I can't really speak as to what players want and what they don't want. I think the issues that Hadley just raised are at the forefront and legitimate issues, especially tax consequences. There's also health and safety issues, right? If you're going to have one team over there and they have 8 games, that means they're playing 8 games on the road, which would be in the United States, presumably. That's a lot of travel. Are they going to set up a schedule where the team comes over for 4 consecutive weeks maybe and just stays somewhere in the United States and travels around to 4 consecutive road games? I don't know if players would be too up on that. So logistically, there are a lot of obstacles, but I can't speak as to what players would want and what they don't want. I mean, it's you probably ask in a room of 100 players, you might get 70 for it and 30 against it, or vice versa. Who knows? It's just like anything else. Like some players want to play on natural grass. Some players don't mind the field turf situation. Some players want, higher minimum salaries. Other players want better pensions. It's all over the board when it comes to a group of 2,000 players. So we'll just have to see where it comes out on that. But there are a number, as Hadley just said, a number of issues that would need to be worked out if that was really something that was on the horizon in the near future.
Mark, let me ask you this. One of the things that we talk about on this podcast, we spend a lot of time obviously talking about money in the different sports and the different ways people are making money. And the one question that's asked to me all the time is about how football, unlike, baseball or basketball, don't have as much guaranteed contracts. It's growing, and obviously maybe you can talk about where it was and where it is and where it hopes to go as far as more contracts having more guaranteed language, a bigger percentage of guaranteed numbers. I know the marquee players have it, but can you talk about how the evolution of guaranteed money has grown in the NFL, over the course of the last 30 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's grown tremendously. I mean, we have a situation, I think, going on 2023 numbers, I'm going off the top of my head here, about 70 to 72, 73% of all compensation to players, and in terms of salaries, not talking about benefits, in terms of salaries, came in some form of guarantee, whether it's a base salary guarantee, whether it's a signing bonus, or a guaranteed roster bonus. So upwards of 70, 72, 73% of all money that is coming to players is already in the form of a guarantee. Now, that still leaves a big chunk when you're talking about over $7.7 billion in cash to players as a league-wide in 2023. That still leaves a big chunk of unguaranteed money. So we're always encouraging the agents, for sure, to negotiate as high guarantees as possible. And then really, the fact that the guarantees have grown, a large part of that is the work that the agents have done in demanding guarantees. It's easy to get Joe Burrow a guarantee or, Dak Prescott a guarantee, but it's those, the guys, the level of player right below that and below that, those are the ones that are seeing more and more guarantees. Now, it's not all peaches and cream. With more guarantees, you may end up with a situation where players have shorter term contracts. And so there's a trade-off, just like with anything else you negotiate. There's going to be pros and cons. But in a sport that has such a high injury rate and such a short career length, getting guarantees in their contracts are are obviously extremely important. Now, why don't all contracts have guarantees? Well, in the other sports, there's nothing in their collective bargaining agreements that provides for full guarantees. It's something that the players and their agents in the other sports have been successfully negotiated over the last 20, 30 years. Well, those other sports have smaller rosters. They have way less injury rate, and they have longer careers. So it's not as, I guess you could say, not as big of a risk from ownership's standpoint to provide guarantees or negotiate guarantees in those contracts as it is in football.
And they also don't have the salary cap that we have. So there's a penalty, obviously, for a team that has a large guarantee, and you will take what's happening here in Atlanta. Their quarterback. I mean, not that that's injury related, but you do a large guarantee and potentially going to release that player. In the other sports, if that happens, it doesn't affect it as drastically as it does here, like Kirk Cousins does.
Yeah, and again, with getting back to injuries, the last thing an owner wants to do is have a big guarantee on his books for a player that's not playing because of injury. Mm-hmm. And frankly, for the other players in the locker room, when there's a limited amount of cap room to spend for each team, you'd rather see it being spent on players who are performing than the players who are not able to perform. Right. So there's a whole bunch of factors as to why not every player has a guarantee. All right, but a large number of them do, and not just the superstar players. Because superstar players, they're going to get theirs. It's easy to negotiate for them. It's the next level down and the level below that and the level below that where the leverage may not be as good for the player. That's really where the agents have, in my opinion, really done a fantastic job for the most part in increasing the amount of guaranteed revenue to players.
Mark, we could talk to you for hours about this stuff, but we know you're busy and we appreciate it. Mark's the Director of Salary Cap and Agent Administration. Thank you for the time, and I'm sure we'll catch up down the road.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, guys. This is my first official podcast. So
yeah, baby.
I'm up, baby.
You'll always remember your first, Mark. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. All right, coming up. Appreciate it, Mark Levin. Coming up, we'll talk about baseball, who could be headed for financial disaster. The word lockout, is that a possibility? We'll talk about that. Plus, Netflix wants more of your money, and it seems NFL coaches don't want any of one owner's money. We'll talk about it as Deals and Deadlines continues. All right, we continue this episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley. I'm Matt. We have a lot of ground to cover here, Hadley, so let's get right into this. So we have another week of signings coming out of baseball for the LA Dodgers. They've added Tanner Scott, another bullpen arm. They've added Kirby Yates on top of one of the big international signings, a pitcher. Their payroll, according to a couple of estimates, exceeding $380 million. Now, there's been a lot of talk this week from some other fan bases, some other teams not so thrilled that they don't have the resources that the Dodgers have, that are indicating, all right, this is going to be a problem, and before the next CBA is finalized, we could have a major issue on our hands. Work stoppage, lockout, strikes, like all these things have become a talk because teams like the Dodgers and the Mets are the haves, right? And so many teams in baseball are the have-nots when it comes to spending. How do you think this will affect the next potential work stoppage or not, the CBA, and what happens from here?
First of all, I don't know if it has a drastic effect. I mean, this has always been the case, right? We're talking about bigger numbers now, but the Dodgers and the Mets and programs like that have always overspent, if you want to use that word, versus other small market teams. To put it in context, I mean, not only are they spending roughly $380 million, it's about $70 million more than the second place team, which I think is the Phillies. So they are spending. Now, owners are sharing in the big pot. And a lot of these owners are content on being semi-competitive, let it come through the draft. If after they reach arbitration, these players leave or we trade them, my bottom line, I'm making money, my net value is going up. So a lot of these owners are content on doing that. And some of them don't have the deep pockets that the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees or teams like that have. So it is a problem. Now, the question is that you asked is, does it lead to a lockout?
Would there be talks of a salary cap? Because it seems their luxury tax implications are not stopping teams like the Dodgers.
And now with deferrals, they're definitely not, right?
So could you see a cap being at least discussed?
I don't think it's going to happen because the rich keep getting richer and players are making a ton of money and they're making a ton of guaranteed money. So I don't think it's affecting the value of a player. And I think, listen, if a big spending team wants to overspend for you, God bless you. If not, you end up to another market or outprice yourself and you end up going to a smaller market. That's the chance you take. But at the end of the day, whether it's Mark Levin with the NFLPA or someone with MLBPA, at the end of the day, it's what can we do to make these players the most money and the most guaranteed money? And right now, players are reaching historical highs in baseball and signing deals that are going way beyond their career length. So I don't think anyone's upset about that. Are fans upset? Yeah, but you know what? That's the market we're in. And how do you know if fans are upset? If attendance drops or viewership drops and all of a sudden there's a problem, then they would address it. But I don't see anything happening short term with regard to issues with how these wealthy teams are spending money.
All right, I want to talk about how the dollars actually affect you guys. A lot of us, boy, we've been Netflixing and chilling for a while, haven't we, Hadley?
100%.
Point is, it's going to cost you more to do that now. So Netflix just came out. They announced a couple of different things. First of all, they saw their numbers jump over 300 million subscribers. Netflix said Tuesday it now has 301 million global subscribers. It's up from about 282 million in October. They also said that jump generated a 16% lift in their fourth quarter revenue to about $10.2 billion. How much of that has to do with the sports impact? We had the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight, which at the time set global records for Netflix for people tuning into a live event. They also had Christmas Day football. And now Netflix has announced they're raising their monthly prices again. They've given you more content, you're going to pay more. So their different pricing moves from $15.49 a month to $17.99 a month. That's the ad-free. You could do the premium tier, which is 4K video included, went from $22.99 a month to $24.99, and with ads, that lowest tier now moves from $6.99 to $7.99. So we're giving you more, but we're also paying more, which means y'all are going to pay more. It's happening again.
Yeah, I think, listen, God bless Netflix, right? What a great business plan this was. It is and was. Let's break it down. First of all, this live sports have an impact on Netflix, no doubt about it. It's a market that they never tapped into. You take the Tyson fight against Jake Paul, that had roughly 60 million viewers. You take the Christmas Day game, that had roughly 30 million viewers. So there's no doubt that increased overall viewership. But you also have to remember one of the other segments is they're doing their own movies. They have their own shows. They got shows like Squid Games. I mean, there's things that are growing internally. And then the other factor is, depending on your family, I know my old family has been sharing one Netflix account, and there's a vast number of us. We can't do that anymore. Right. So they have dissected that to make us spend as a family more money. So I think, and then they've raised it, right? And again, we talk about raising it. It's a couple of dollars a month, so it's not like it's this drastic thing. But I think all these factors play into it. But I do believe live sports has played a big role because, again, like we talked to Mark Levin about gambling money as part of the overall income for the NFL. Live sports wasn't something they had 2-3 years ago. So you add that into their overall marketing and business plan, I think there's no doubt about it, it goes up. And I think more people are going to watch, more people are going to be interactive. And I think, raising it a couple of dollars is not a big deal. We talk about it, but yet you go to a ballpark and the hot dog went up $1 or the beer went up $1. You're still going to drink the beer. You're still going to eat the hot dog.
And incremental price hikes when you have 300 million subscribers on their, they have a whiteboard at Netflix, right? It's like, we're going to raise it $2 this month, 6 months from now, we'll do another $2 and we'll keep doing it. And you think back to 5 years ago, what you paid, and now all of a sudden it's the hike. It jumps off the page at you, but when you're doing it in $2, $3 increments, it.
And again, let me add to that. Again, when you raise it too much and people shy away from it and your numbers go down, your viewership goes down, your bottom line goes down, we overpriced.
Correct.
Right now, they're making more money. We can talk about it, we can complain about it, but we're all subscribing to it, whether it's for the movies, whether it's for the sports, whether it's for, TV shows, whatever it may be, it's the future. And, it's you can argue about it, but at the end of the day, it's not enough to change it. And again, as long as they're having these live sporting events and they're not charging a premium, remember, you got to watch the Tyson fight.
For free. I'm paying my $23
Yeah, but you were paying that anyway, right? You didn't subscribe just for that.
For that fight, I should have gotten my money back.
Well, that's a whole other discussion.
I didn't pay anything and I should have. All right, let's finish up by talking about the NFL. You, the agent, if you're representing coaches, and right now the NFL still has 5 jobs open. Teams are 4 jobs open. Teams are looking to fill their spots. Jacksonville's had an interesting week, and when I say interesting, it's not been great. Story earlier in the week that Ben Johnson, turned down the Jags, wasn't interested in their up, as he said. And maybe that's Trent Baalke, the GM. Maybe didn't see eye to eye with Shad Khan, the owner, whatever it might be. And then he took the Bears job. Well, we're recording this on Wednesday, and Liam Cohen, the OC of the Bucs, I guess it sounded like he was in pretty good position to take the Jags job. At the 11th hour, he said, nope, not interested. Doesn't like the setup there as well, maybe for the same reasons. So what are the agents and what are these coaches seeing internally that they're saying there are better opportunities? Even if it's not this year, I'll take my assistant coaching job and do it again another year.
Yeah, so I represent coaches as well. So I can tell you when you look at it, first of all, putting the money aside, obviously, right? Because that's going to be an important factor, and the length of the contract are all part of it. But the other segments that are always important are ownership. Is there a quarterback? And the general manager. Can I work with that person? And so those three things. We'll take Jackson, for example. The owner is a big spender, will spend money, is doing new stuff in Jacksonville. They play in Europe. Jacksonville's great. It's an state income tax free state, great fan base. So that's not the problem. Quarterback, debatable, right? Is Trevor Lawrence one of the top 5-10 quarterbacks, or is he just middle of the road and he is what he is? The caveat there is they have a general manager. Trent's a great guy, Trent Baalke. But, is he on his last leg? And do you want to be part of something where in a year from now, if you don't win, and you don't have to win year one as a head coach when you first get there, do they fire the general manager and now you got to deal with a whole internal change? So I think that's the bigger issue. I think when Ben Johnson was looking, or Aaron Glenn, who's allegedly going to the Jets, you look at this is my opportunity to coach. Ben Johnson had multiple opportunities. He's got a young quarterback. He likes this quarterback. He's got a great market. They're going to build a new stadium, a great fan base. He may have a history with the general manager there, and so feels comfortable that the entire framework is going to be a better framework to work around. And again, you got to weigh these things. Aaron Glenn going to the Jets. Ownership, questionable. Woody Johnson and some of the things that he does, but it's obviously the top market to be in. Who's your quarterback?
Does he think he convinces Aaron Rodgers to play another year and start that way?
I don't know. There's going to be a lot of convincing. He's got to bring in an offensive coordinator. So I think it's more to it. And so you've got to weigh all these different things. But I would say the big three things outside of your salary and the ability to bring in a staff are the ownership, the general manager, and do you have that franchise quarterback that you can build around and grow and develop and win ball games?
It's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out, all the rest of the coaching circles and the carousel that continues to spin forward. I will remind you guys, please subscribe to the podcast. Just search Deals and Deadlines. We're available on all podcast platforms. The new episodes drop each and every Friday morning. You can also watch it on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. So that'll do it for us this week. For Hadley, I'm Matt. Thanks to our executive producer type person, Amanda Schwartz, and to you guys for spending your time.
Thank you, Amanda.
We'll talk to you next week.